Good meeting begins and ends on time. I'm Councilman Ryan Dorsey. I was asked to be here as vice chair for this 5-hour period here. Councilman Costello has stepped out of the room for a minute, so I just thought I'd get us rolling here. We are back with the Ways and Means Committee hearing the annual ordinance of estimates. It's 4:30, and we are with the Department of General Services, whose budget begins in volume 1, page 155 of the budget books. I'm Ryan Dorsey, City Council member from the 3rd District. We have here Councilman Costello has just stepped back in the room. We have members of the committee, Councilman Robert Stokes, Vice President Sharon Middleton, members Antonio Glover, and who else do we have here? Councilwoman Felicia Porter, Odette Ramos, and various representatives from the mayor's office, the council president's office, and here as well as the city administrator's office. Chi-Chi, would you like to take it away here? You're with us virtually. You have staff here. Take your presentation away. Mr. Chair, would you like to set a time on how long their presentation should be? We have 1 hour for the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Chi-Chi, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Let's try and keep the presentation to around 10 minutes, please, and thank you.
Good afternoon, Council Committee Chair Costello, council members, and everyone present. My name is Chi-Chi Nyaganesh, and I'm the Director of General Services. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to be able to present DGS's fiscal 22 budget. I'll speak quickly. There's a lot to go through because I really want to paint a picture for you to see what a lean and well-oiled machine DGS is. And you'll also note that all our services fall within the priority outcome of clean and healthy communities. If we go to the next slide, please. Is the presentation up for you all? Okay, there we go. So on the next slide, I'll just very quickly highlight the DGS org chart. So like I said, we're lean. We have five different divisions. We have the administrative division, and in front of you, I should introduce as Deputy Director Eric Schuler, who's representing me in chambers because I cannot be present. We have the fleet management division, facilities management, capital projects and design, and within capital projects is now also, as recent as fiscal 21, what was known as the Sustainable Energy Office, which is a public and private energy performance service. Next slide, please. Okay, so just for those following along, the order in which I'm going to present is by service number. So I don't have any favorites amongst divisions. I'm just going by service number as they appear in the budget book. So fleet management division is the largest of our divisions just by sheer head count. We have about 250 employees in that division. They're responsible for all activities to do with city vehicles. I do want to note and give particular kudos to that division because during COVID, there has been absolutely no cessation of their services. We did, however, need to, for several months, change the shift structure to be able to allow for social distancing within the workplace in the garages. And I'm just particularly pleased with the way that they've been able to maintain availability, even working under those difficult conditions. And it was particularly visible with our support of Public Works when they restarted the recycling and refuse collection work. The master lease continues to be a great tool that the city is using for financing the purchase of city vehicles. We've been able to continue to see we're addressing the backlog of vehicles that needed to be replaced, and it's resulting in a reduction in the operating costs that the city faces in managing and maintaining those vehicles. It has been exciting to see just in the past year the collaboration between the Fleet Management Division and our Energy Office in the pursuit of grants for us to be able to push for an increase of electric vehicles, not just the vehicles themselves, but the infrastructure that the city will need to be able to increase the number of EVs that our agencies are driving. And then finally, I just would like to highlight the fact that we are continuing with the gain sharing program, which I've spoken about before in budget presentation, and it just for anyone who has not heard about it, it is the equivalent of a profit sharing that would be in the private sector. And the way we're using it is it's an employee incentivized program that encourages employees to find operational efficiencies. And through that program, just in the last fiscal year, we were able to avoid costs in the amount of about $700,000, $800,000. And then a portion of that is paid out to the employees who facilitated the savings. Next slide, please. The administrative division is small. We have about 25 individuals in that division. It's an increase from last year, and that's because we did a little bit of an internal reorganization to pull individuals from some of the operational divisions in to centralize what would essentially be support services. So HR, IT were pulled from facilities management and fleet management so that there could be better management of those individuals within a centralized structure to allow for better professional development, for better management of those individuals within the organization. And so that's why you would see an increased headcount in administration. Next slide, please. The energy office, like I said, it resides within the capital project. So really that new division we refer to it as capital projects and energy. The energy office has bounced around a little bit in recent years. So it used to be with DGS, it moved over to DPW, and then in the midst of fiscal 21, we moved it back over to DGS because it made sense for it to reside within DGS, and by it being in DGS, we can capitalize on the benefits of Julia Kalos and her team working closer with facilities, facilities being the largest consumer of energy within the city, as well as working with Bambi Stevens and Capital and being able to integrate better into the renovation and building improvement projects, and being able to weigh in on the energy improvements that can accompany those projects. What has been exciting to see in the past year and is continuing is the amount of grants that the office has been able to secure. One particular exciting one that was actually just publicized by Maryland Energy Administration this week is the receipt of $100,000 for us to undertake a feasibility analysis of what would potentially be a microgrid in the downtown area. So that's a very, very exciting project for us to be able to start analyzing and seeing if there's a way we can design a way to be more resilient and sustainable in the consumption of energy, of utilities in the downtown campus area. That office is going to be really critical in the coming years as the city aligns an energy strategy with the current administration's climate-related goals around greenhouse gas reduction and clean energy technologies. So there's going to be a lot of work for us to do in that division. Next slide, please, Eric. Facilities management is perhaps the most visible to all of you who work in City Hall and in any of our other buildings. We manage about 6 million square feet of space in the DGS building portfolio. To put a dollar value to the amount of square footage that we're managing, if the current replacement value for all our assets is close to $2 billion. And even as I say that the current replacement value is close to $2 million, by our calculations and analysis, we are actually at we have a deferred capital requirement of $1 billion. So needless to say, we are managing buildings that are beyond their useful life, and that puts a lot of strain on Terrell Chesson, Chief Chesson, and the rest of the facilities management team to be able to prioritize where our operating dollars are going to go. And so you'll find that for the most part, we are trying to focus on life safety, fire systems, indoor air quality, and building envelope issues before we get to anything aesthetic. So we have to be really strategic about where our dollars are going in operating these facilities. That service is staffed by in-house staff who are both mobile, so going from facility to facility, in addition to some who are assigned primarily to individual buildings. And we do rely very, very heavily on a wide variety of vendors to provide additional service, because it is a small staff. We definitely can't do all the maintenance in our facilities with just in-house personnel. DGS is the recipient of surplus schools once the school system has surplused them out, whether because they built new ones or are consolidating multiple schools into new schools under the 21st Century School program. This coming year, we're receiving 8 schools, and it's important to note that there have been improvements in the way the city is receiving these schools, and we're trying to be more proactive in working with the Property Disposition Committee in trying to expedite the transition of those buildings out of city inventory as soon as we receive them, so that we're not sitting on excess inventory of vacant schools. I should note also that it was really impressive to see how this particular service did not cease any operations during COVID. In fact, their workload was significantly increased because of the role that they've been playing as a part of the Restoration of City Services oversight team. And so that Chief Chesson and his team have been the individuals who've been going out and measuring spaces and installing plexiglass and trying to ensure that individuals who are continuing to be in the workplace during COVID have been able to do that in a safe and secure environment. So I just want to call them out and give them kudos for the way they were able to transition and take on that additional responsibility. Next slide, please, Eric. Did it transition over? Okay, thank you. So the last service that we'll be presenting on is capital projects. And just to point out what's particularly different about the budgeting for this service is that the majority of the costs of the service are charged to capital projects. So the individuals within this division, when they're assigned a project, their expenses are included in the cost of the capital project. Like I mentioned in the section about facilities management, the deferred maintenance that we are facing in our portfolio is very visible in the work that the capital group does as well, because they too have to prioritize where it is that the capital dollars that are allocated to us are going to go. So Chief Stevens and her team, in support of several other agencies for whom they create the capital improvement program budgets for, have to decide what roofs are in more dire need than other roofs, what building envelopes need more critical attention than others. And so it's definitely a juggling act, and it's one that is increasingly difficult to do as the infrastructure continues aging. And so as we do that, we are hoping to be able to continue capitalizing on different procurement vehicles, including piggybacking on existing state contracts or other jurisdictions' contracts, and changing the way we procure, for example, contracts that may not require design work, and using our architectural and engineering firms in a different way. And with that, I have concluded. I didn't really pit. I'm 2 minutes over, my apologies, and I welcome any questions.
Chi-Chi, thank you so much. I'm going to start off. So other government entities have found creative ways to fund the construction of new government facilities. One way that they've done that is through public-private partnerships or PPPs. As DGS, explored alternative funding sources to construct or develop government facilities, shifting some of the burden from taxpayers to the private market? And if so, can you give any examples of that?
It's a short answer, and then I will defer to Deputy Schuler and see if he would like to add anything. We have started investigating that. We have not undertaken any P3s. Part of the challenge for us is that we don't do new construction. So a lot of what Chief Stevens and her group are doing is renovations of existing spaces, or, like I said, projects like roofing or those kind of projects. We're not building anything ground up, and so that kind of a little bit limits what we're able to pursue as far as P3s. But we have been having conversations about what our options could look like, and we have the advantage of Mr. Schuler having undertaken P3s in prior work that he's done in higher education. So Eric, if there's anything you want to add about the direction that we've been discussing going in, please go ahead.
I have nothing to add. You covered it, Chi-Chi. Thank you.
And Chairman Costello, if I might, one of the
Please.
things that we're hoping to explore with the procurement reform is identifying where in the process we might be able to fit P3s in, because it is going to be a new concept for the city. While it's not as sexy as a P3 in other jurisdictions, I think the Sun Building is a good first step, where we've looked at some of our assets. We looked at the ones that are most depreciated. We had a consultant come and advise us on what their real estate market might be. And we looked at the financial structure of trying to recapitalize those buildings versus going into a private lease with a, frankly, just much better facility. So it's not, there may not be anything that fits the perfect P3 model, but I can proudly say that we are looking and pushing to shrink our footprint to surplus buildings when available, and to be strategic about our resources.
Thank you. I want to take a moment. I forgot to acknowledge City Administrator Chris Shorter, Deputy City Administrator Daniel Ramos. Daniel, I want to say congratulations on the incredible work that you helped shepherd, and I know that City Administrator Chris Shorter was a part of at the, I guess it's 501 North Calvert Street, the former Baltimore Sun Building. I had an opportunity to tour that with Mayor Scott and with City Administrator Shorter. And I was just blown away at the work you all did there, and creating a facility that is deserving of our officers in the Central District. And I know you have other plans down the road to expand that. So I'm really excited about that, and really appreciate all the great work that went into that. Chi-Chi, I got a question. Please don't take it as being flippant. I've asked all of the agencies that are on this list the same question. I'm going to rattle off a list of agencies for you. DGS is one of them. DOT, Housing and Community Development, Rec and Parks, Department of Public Works, Baltimore City Public School System, and the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. I suspect you're going to be the only one that gets this question correct for some reason, but what do all 7 of those agencies have in common?
They all mow grass. Is that the right answer?
That is the right answer, among other things, yes. This is something that my predecessor on the council, Bill Cole, who you know well, started taking up back in 2009, 2010. It's something that Council Vice President Middleton has been very vocal about last term. What do you see as the opportunity here in terms of consolidating those operations and reorganizing them in a way that is that just makes more sense in terms of our ability to just get grass cut when it needs to get cut? And I'll add one piece of commentary. Parks, for example, should be cut every 14 days, right? We don't want families losing their kids or their dogs in the grass. We don't expect medians on 295 to be cut every 14 days, right? So there's some complexity in the operation, but do you see an opportunity to fix this under one agency?
I don't necessarily know if it would be under one agency, but I definitely do see an opportunity to consolidate this service. And I do know that there is conversation within the administration to do that. I've also been fortunate enough to be so DGS is one of the agencies that's involved in CleanStat, and so in our representation there, we do see it is evident that there are ways that agencies can collaborate on this. And so I know that there are efforts underway within the administration to discuss how this can be consolidated. And I do see a solution in the future, and a need for one, yes.
Okay.
Chairman Costello, if you wouldn't mind me jumping in.
Please.
So as Director Nagaya Nash mentioned, the administration is committed to looking at this. I can tell you, and Bob, please feel free to jump in. I think every single budget director and deputy budget director has tried to do a consolidation. There are real nuances between the types of work that DOT does, Rec and Parks, et cetera. So we are trying to figure that out. We also are just very conscious about the bigger the contract, the more the opportunity to exclude MBE and WBE firms is. So we're having to be very thoughtful about how we approach this issue.
Two things in response. One, I appreciate the comment about some of our smaller firms as well as MBE and WBE. That's something that that Administrator Shorter and I have talked about, and I appreciate Mayor Scott's commitment to ensuring that we have good opportunities for firms that are especially those that are based in Baltimore, and especially those that are MBE or WBE certified. And I will certainly take you at your word, considering you were a former deputy budget director, so you may know a thing or two about that. So thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Chichi, I know that I had a tremendous amount of heartburn associated with the arrangements between DGS and the school system on small capital projects. And I know you spoke earlier about piggybacking off of it. The reason was, and the reason that was sold to me was the level of urgency around some of these small capital projects and the ability of utilizing a contract that was currently in place with the school systems. My big heartburn, and it's funny to come right after what Chairman just kind of talked about, was that we were limiting opportunities, particularly for our small and minority firms in and around the city that were based in the city, to go after these quote unquote smaller jobs, because these jobs would be more ripe for a smaller firm to actually go after it and get the contract. But we wanted to lump it into a contract that had 3 larger companies with no footprint or presence in the city, with limited city residents that they currently employ. I recently learned that the War Memorial is part of the quote unquote small capital projects. I don't consider the War Memorial small. I don't remember it in any of our discussions of it being considered as one of those jobs. Trying to understand from a DGS perspective, what are your characteristics, what are your determination of what you consider a small job? If I could recall back to the discussion, we were talking about like small libraries, small flat school roofs. So just really trying to understand how the War Memorial bypassed the ability to be publicly bid for local small minority contracts and got lumped into the city school contract. And again, maybe it's my lack of understanding of what we kind of consider small. Maybe you're going to explain to me what small means and how the War Memorial fits into that.
Absolutely. So I'm not too sure where the term small is coming from, but just for everyone else's understanding.
We use the term small capital projects several times through several forms of communication, email, everything else. I mean, that was communicated to us that these were smaller jobs. And if you could recall back to the discussion, my main concern was that because these are quote unquote smaller jobs, those were the types of jobs where I felt as if small minority women-owned local companies probably would be able to compete as opposed to larger jobs.
So if I could just put this into context for everyone else who was not privy to those conversations. So the piggyback that that Council President Mosby is referring to is DGS has piggybacked on a Baltimore City Schools contract for roofing. And the reason that for an on-call roofing company, the reason that we undertook this contract is because the capital projects division identified that there are roofing projects that do not require a full design process as part of the roof replacement. The design component of a project, just by virtue of additional work for the consultant that's doing it, increases the cost of those projects. There are some roofing replacements that are quote unquote simple in terms of not needing a design. So you're going to come in and retar a roof or take off the existing roof and replace it as just in the exact same way as a roof that you found there. So there's no need to redesign anything. Those are the projects we are undertaking through this piggyback. The reason why libraries came up so much in conversation is because at the time we were trying to, one of the most urgent jobs that we needed to do, and the reason why we were in a hurry to do it is because library had expressed to us the need to replace the roof of one of their smaller libraries. I do not recall indicating that we were only going to do small roofs, and if I did, my apologies, Council President Mosby. This contract again was to be used for roofs that do not need design work. The War Memorial falls within the category of urgent because if we do not replace that roof expeditiously, there is going to be continued water damage on the interior of the building. And so, like I stated in the presentation of facilities and capital, what we are focusing on our buildings and where we're trying to put our dollars is on the building envelope, almost exclusively in some cases, because that's really all we can control. And the War Memorial roof falls squarely within that category. It is urgently needed. It does not need any design work. And so this contract is one that fits the bill for that job.
Understood. I guess if there's any additional, I know there's some firehouses. I believe the Dundalk facility, which we talked about, was the Enoch Pratt facility. Again, I recently learned that this new War Memorial was added. In the future, before we add any additional, if we could talk about that, or I can better understand that. Again, I decided to agree very begrudgingly because, again, these types of less complex flat roof, tar roofs are the type of opportunities that we should be presenting to smaller minority, women-owned, local-based companies, not companies from out of town that do not employ Baltimore City residents. So the fact of the characteristics of these jobs is what really gave me heartburn that we were doing a piggyback contract and lumping them into companies, again, with the characteristics that do not meet interest, particularly as it relates to the needs of our residents in our city right now. So again, if that list is expanded, Director Chichi, I'm sorry, Deputy CEO Ramos or Deputy or CEO Shorter, I would like to put that on a very high priority that I'm communicated with about that. I have concern with contracts like this, and I'm going to continue to have concerns with contracts like this, particularly when we're leveraging them from outside agencies and they're not even from a city perspective, and we're not doing our own vetting and our own process around them. So again, if anything else is added to that list, if you could please let me know, I would truly, truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I would just like to note, this item was going to come before you on the agenda for the task.
Yes, I appreciate it. Yeah,
okay.
and you communicated that to me, like no matter what, they would still kind of come up before us, even though we were agreeing to the piggyback contract. Again, you know, we did this just for the general public's knowledge. We did this in limited fashion. The idea was that DGS, because they needed this vehicle so quickly, in parallel, will be working on their own vehicle to ensure that when these roofs and these other types of projects come up in the future, again, we can ensure that we're putting Baltimore City companies in the best position to go after Baltimore City work.
That is correct, and we are undertaking that RFP right now. We are working on drafting it.
Thank you so much for your leadership on that, Director Chichi. One last question. When we talk about master lease agreements associated with the fleet, kind of to the grass cutting question, does DGS handle all agencies from a master lease perspective for fleet? And if not, what agencies don't you guys undertake?
So yes, we do. We oversee the procurement of all city vehicles. So we maintain that inventory, and we have a 20, a 10, and a 5-year replacement plan in place. So we have a software that takes into consideration the age of a vehicle, its mileage, its history of operating and maintenance expenses, and several other criteria, and prioritizes what needs to be replaced within any fiscal year. We then undertake the borrowing that the Treasury Department does, and then advise the agencies on which of their vehicles need to be replaced in coming fiscal year. And so yes, we do undertake that for the entirety of the city fleet. We advise on what needs to be replaced, we do the procurement, and then we swap out essentially, and then surplus off the vehicles that are being replaced.
And that's inclusive of BPD, is that right?
That is inclusive of BPD, correct?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for your question.
Thank you, Vice President Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just want to first start off with mine, I guess would be mostly comments, and then Chi-Chi can respond. I think you and your office deserve kudos for basically doing this COVID. My district, which is outside of the downtown area where most of the or should I say all of the homeless shelters are located. And because of this emergency COVID, an emergency shelter was basically put in a residential area at Green Spring Middle School surrounding 5 residential neighborhoods. So you can imagine what I had to do as a council person and the partnerships and understanding that had to happen within the neighborhoods, along with the cooperation and success of your office. And you continue to be there and available in need to keep things together as hopefully we move this shelter as promised out of these 5 surrounding neighborhoods. Again, I give you kudos for that. It's from grass cutting on that, you know, these communities are watching, and it's again, it was an emergency. A downtown shelter, men's shelter, had to spread out, and they used this 21st century empty school to do that. And I'm telling you, and I'm sharing with my colleagues, that this took a lot of partnership and work. And to this day, so far, things have been successful. So I'm hoping with the promise of this, as we move through the RFP with this selling of hotels or hotel, that this shelter is one of the first that's going to be disseminated, because there is a potential project that's coming there. So this is a trickling down effect. I don't know if you want to comment on that before I move to the next thing. My second.
I'll just acknowledge your kudos and thank you very much for that. The credit there goes to Chief Chesson and the facilities management team. He has a wonderful relationship with the Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and the communication between those two is it's very, very strong stream of communication. And so that's how we've been able to respond to MOHS's needs at that facility and others that they're managing. In terms of the order in which the shelters will be vacated, I would have to defer to the Mayor's office and City Administrator for that. But we stand in support of Mayor's Office of Homeless Services, and we'll continue to be here for them in meeting their needs to provide shelter to individuals experiencing homelessness. But thank you very much for the recognition.
And I guess the second piece is, you know, your office, or you do so much in so many ways with buildings throughout our city, and it's amazing the work that you do with the little bit that you basically have. And another example of your hard work is with Langston Hughes. We know that Langston Hughes was a another school that had closed. And now through my work and the community work, and also your work, at the time you were maintaining that facility, it's still in dire need of work, but it is now owned by, I want to say, the community, the first of its ever, owned by a African Americans that live and reside in that neighborhood, and they're working hard to maintain. I look at this as an example of other things that could happen around the city. Then COVID struck with them, but they're getting ready to kick off the success and continuation of the services in that building that the city basically cannot help them with. And again, it just happens to be in Park Heights, one of the most impoverished neighborhoods. But I just wanted to just give a highlight of how important it is for you, for not just you, but all agencies to communicate with not just the council people, but everyone. Communication is just so important in this time, and we can't say it enough. And you have been there and just tried to work out everything from grass cutting to plumbing to you name it. You are the agency that handles these difficult situations that we need, and all of it has to do with it's surrounded and comes back to shelter. So thank you again, and I'll stop there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Councilman.
Councilman Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Chichi, I just have a question. I drive, and we've been talking about this, a city vehicle, and I know a lot of my other colleagues have city vehicles, but the maintenance of the vehicle, if I get a flat, I gotta go to Barbell Ford. When we got mechanics down off of Fallsway. Have y'all looked into that again? Because I got a flat one day, and when I got to get the oil changed, I got to go up to Kane Street with a city leased vehicle. I don't know how that deal happened. When we got mechanics, we got city mechanics down off of near Gay Street that service city vehicles, and I'm still going to Kane Street for the last 3 years to get an oil change. So have we looked back at that contract? Because almost like we are actually spending more money by getting this service and oil change and all that at a particular dealership where we probably paying more money.
So I'll give a response as to why you cannot go to a city garage with your vehicle, and then I will defer to the mayor's office on, or perhaps council president's office on the direction that can be taken with this particular issue. The reason why you and your colleagues who are in leased vehicles cannot drive up to the Fallsway garage and get your oil change or your tire fixed is because, like you noted, it is a leased vehicle. It is not a city-owned vehicle, and our facilities, our auto mechanics are not permitted to work on vehicles that are not owned by the mayor and city council. And so those were the terms of the lease with the company from whom you're leasing and the other agencies are leasing from. Regular maintenance has to be done by the at the dealership that is affiliated with those leases. So the only way you can get into Fallsway is if you are driving a city vehicle. But again, I will defer to council president's office on that matter. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it makes sense, but to me, I guess it's not a city vehicle and it's leased. To me, I think we just wasted money to go to a dealership because they're going to charge you more money, for all that. So I just thought maybe we could look at that contract and look a different way how we can save some money and not go to the dealership for a leased vehicle that my colleagues and myself drive. So I don't know if Mr. Shorter, I know it's not I don't know if it's a mayor's issue or president city council issue. Is that something that your office can look at also?
Yeah, and Robert, I'll speak up, Chief Shorter. Rob, yeah, we'll take it offline. We'll talk to Hosea and figure out if there's something we can do with administration. I understand your logic and exactly what you're saying, so we'll see if there's a workaround to help save the city money on that point.
Thank you, Councilman Burnett.
I don't have any questions at this time. Because I think a lot of what I was going to ask has already been touched on, so I'll hold off in the interest of that.
Thank you. Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I have no additional questions.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ramos.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me just get my lights on here. I had a question about, and we were just talking about roofs earlier with the council president's exchange. Is there an opportunity to start thinking about having, solar on our buildings, not only to save money on our own energy costs, but also a possibility down the line?
Director, hang on one second. Councilwoman Ramos, please do two things for me. Run that back, but just summarize it in one sentence because you were cutting out a little bit there at the end. So I don't know that the director got your whole question there.
Okay, great. Is this okay? Can you still?
Perfect. And if you want to turn your camera off while you're asking the question, just so there's no lag or anything on your connection, feel free to. That's your choice. But you're on mute now, Councilwoman.
Council Chair, I think I got the gist of her question. If I can
Okay.
repeat it back,
Please,
and then she
please.
can tell me if I'm off the mark here. I believe her question was whether we have investigated the possibility of installing solar panels on city buildings to augment or to replace the current power supply. Was that right, Councilman Ramos?
Yes, as well as think about community solar.
Okay, absolutely. So in a second, I'm going to defer to Julia Kalos, who heads up our energy office, to give a bit more information. But the grant that I highlighted when I was talking about the energy office that we just received from the Maryland Energy Administration for the feasibility study on a microgrid would take those alternative energy sources into consideration for the downtown campus. I'm not sure, I know for sure this particular assessment would not look into installation of solar in the community, but I know that Ms. Kilos has joined us today, so if we could give her audio to be able to give a bit more information on the direction that we're taking as far as alternative energy sources, I would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Director, and thank you, Councilwoman. Julia Kalos, Deputy Chief of Energy in the Division of Capital Projects and Energy for DGS. For solar to roof, a short answer is yes, it is something we are looking at for capital projects. There's a lot of struggles with the state of our roofs in terms of condition, availability of space, structural assessments that would have to be done to consider roofs. We've done some initial assessments of costs. In particular, Maryland Energy Administration has some significant grants right now for public facilities with solar. In most of those cases, we are looking at the city receiving that power versus doing community solar, and that the scale of the kind of project we can put on most city roofs would be pretty small for community solar development. But we have done some initial talks in terms of doing community solar for landfills, but there we have the balance between should this asset serve the city, or if it's community solar, where then there's this third party, it's going out to what's the revenue opportunity, the value to the city, and I like to think about what's the overall vision of what the city should do with its assets. Should those assets be producing power for residents through community solar? Should it be producing through us? It becomes part of a policy question rather than, to me, a facility improvement question. That is all I have today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. That I'm glad to know that you're thinking that through and trying to figure out the right way to go about it. Because you're right, we have this amazing asset. We have all these roofs. we could save money, a lot of money with solar.
Councilwoman Ramos, you good?
Actually, yes. Now that I looked at my notes, I had a question, and I'm sorry if this was answered already. How's the department adapting to Workday? I know that some of the workers were, I got some complaints in my office about the transition to Workday from your department.
We have adapted well, much like other agencies. It was a bit of a rough patch in the first few weeks, but I will say that between BSIT, DHR, and finance, the improvements that have been made not only in standing up or addressing the technical issues that we were experiencing, but additionally in the level of communication that is coming out to agency heads and to the employees at large has been very welcome and has improved. It's a long learning curve for us. It's been tough for the employees to understand what their new responsibilities are as far as their interaction with the system daily, as opposed to when they were used to just submitting a paper timesheet every 2 weeks. And so that continues to be a challenge within the workforce. But the transition is going well. And we have not experienced any payroll issues recently.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dorsey will be with you all in 1 second. He's having technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Thank you, Marguerite. Do we have, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ramos, you just finished up. Councilman Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually want to follow up on the line of questioning from Councilwoman Ramos around energy. And if Mr. Chair, you could bear with me, that there's a series of questions that I think will sort of help me zero in. So if it's okay, I'd like to ask more than two, but I think the answers will be pretty short.
Yeah, please just keep in mind, I'm sorry, is there anybody else that has any other questions? I just want to make sure we're keeping track of time here because we only have like 12 minutes left.
Sure.
Looks like I think you're probably the only one left with questions. So go right ahead.
Sure, thank you. So as I was combing through the budget, my first question was around the Service 730 and the dollars saved and revenue generated from energy efficiency products. I noticed that we didn't quite meet the target there, but going into 2021 and 2022, we reduced our target. Is there any reason why we decided to do that?
Would you please repeat which measure that was, Mr. Conway?
This is the outcome metric for Service 730. It's the dollars saved and revenue generated from energy efficiency projects. And the target for 2020 was 21,400,000. Our actual was 14.5, and we reduced the target for 2021 and 2022 to 15.5. Is there any reason why we reduced it?
There is, and again, I think Julia will do a much better job with explaining. And this, before she responds, I will point out again the fact that this service moved back to DGS in the middle of FY21, and so some of the goals that had been set in the past were not under Julia's leadership, and so in her assessment when she took over the office, part of the first few months were really getting a lay of the land, understanding what goals had been set, what projects were in place. And so that partially explains why you'll see that shift in some of the goals from prior years. Julia, I'll let you weigh in if there's anything additional you'd like to add about that particular goal and the targets that we've set.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Councilman. It's exactly correct. When we inherited this performance measure, it included some estimates of savings and opportunities and revenue that I could not document and support in claiming into the future. So whatever I could justify, calculate, quantify, I kept in that measure and how we accounted for it. If I couldn't account for it, I made sure to not continue to claim that savings.
Got it.
This,
So
yeah.
it's just a better calculation is what you're saying of the
And
reality.
better documented and justified so we can review it in the future.
Got it. Thank you. And then sort of following up on that, the second, the performance measure right under that, the efficiency metric, the percentage of city government usage from renewable sources. I noticed that has declined over time from 5.6% in 2017 to 4.1% in 2020. I doubt we're removing any solar panels or, going toward dirtier energies. That's possible. I just want to get a little bit of insight. What's going on there and what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this goes back to the definition of that measure and the way the calculations were being done from the previous energy office and the energy office under Julia's leadership. And that one particular measure, the differences in how we look at renewable energy credits and whether or not whether they should or should not be included in the calculation of the city's usage of renewable sources. And so that's why you see that decrease from 6 to 4 and then 4.5 is in how we look at the renewable energy credits. And Julia, if you want to add anything more on the RECs and how they're calculated and how they factor into this, please do.
Yeah, I wanted to give you some context, because by statute under the renewable portfolio standard, the city purchases, we're grandfathered into a lower percentage, but it'll soon change, to 18% of our power, our electricity we purchased this past year is renewable because we purchased renewable energy credits to cover that power. The way that this measure was written is specifically only for those projects that we at the city have supported or entered into, which includes 1 megawatt of solar at Back River. It includes 3 megawatts of digester gas fueled combined heat and power at Back River. And it includes a 10 megawatt power purchase agreement we have in Perryman. All of those, we do not retain the renewable energy credits. So it's power that we are responsible for, but we cannot claim towards a goal of how much of our power is renewable energy. The reason that it's changed over time is primarily that, becoming more accurate with the projects. And also, as we get to the end of the combined heat and power project at Back River, there's been a severe shortage of digester gas and a lot of electrical interruptions related to the large projects that are happening out there that have reduced the production of that plant. And something that we are seriously looking into, making sure that when that comes to end in life at just 3 years, that we develop a new project that maximizes the amount of generation we can do behind the grid and use up all of the digester gas created by anaerobic digestion. Thank you.
Got it. So
Thank you,
if I could sort of summarize what you're saying that most of the credits that we have been applying to this is we purchase those credits from folks that produce renewable energy, and that as they produce less energy, of course, we can claim fewer credits. Is that what you're saying?
Not quite, but almost. So the 4% that's in this measure is power that we either own the project or we have a power purchase agreement to do the project, but we don't retain the renewable energy credits. And it's really important to keep them separate.
So those aren't counted toward the 4.1%.
No, those are the 4.1%. This is my problem with how this measure is written that we inherited, because it's not well written to be clear that this is power that we're responsible to have generated, but we can't claim that 4% of our power is renewable. We can alternatively claim that 18% of our power is renewable because we buy them through the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee. We buy 18% of our electricity in renewable energy credits. Some people would make the error of adding that 18 and adding the 4, because that is a sum total. You could add it all together, but it would not be accurate to sum them together. This is a measure that I think is some measure I would like us all to look into and figure out how to better write this so we can be most accurate about exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really helpful, especially as we look into the future. And I'm sure the city will develop some sort of goal and things that we'll begin to work toward. And I think perfecting this metric or these metrics will help us get there. Now, my last final question and maybe sort of suggestion as well. Of course, Councilwoman Ramos asked about solar panels on roofs. I think that is a phenomenal idea. You alluded to some of the concerns about the condition of some of our roofs, that we may have to do some updates. In the course of those updates, though, I think and you may already be thinking about this, but while doing those updates, there are probably low cost and no cost changes that we can do to roofs that can probably improve efficiency and address additional issues such as stormwater flow and heat island effect around those buildings as well. And of course, that's white roofs and green roofs and also solar panels as well. And so as we think about the need to upgrade our infrastructure to replace our roofs and so on and so forth, are we thinking about these opportunities? Do we have any policies, or should we consider any policies, or would you consider any policies? I'm just throwing random questions out there that can bring these additional ancillary benefits at a low or no additional costs, such as like painting roofs white as opposed to black roofs. Is that something we're thinking about?
Julia, I'll just defer directly to you on that.
I almost might have to defer as well. I think I understand what the councilman's question is. I don't know if Eric or Bambi is more familiar with the standards of roofs that we put together. I haven't been involved in direct roofing projects to be able to specify what exactly our policy is at this moment.
So
I'm pretty certain we don't have a policy, but yeah, please go ahead, Mr. George.
excuse me. I will defer to Bambi to add more to this, but there's not necessarily a policy in place to look at all the areas that you just touched on. We are exploring opportunities to take a more comprehensive approach when we do any sort of capital project, and we look at the entire building envelope, and we look for opportunities where we may have a good return on investment or a way to improve the life cycle cost or long-term operational cost of the asset. The challenge that we face is, even if there's opportunities to improve things like heat island effect, oftentimes what can happen in a design approach like that is it's the first thing that gets value engineered out of the process if it looks like we don't have the capital funds to invest and do the priority portions of that particular project. So that's generally where we struggle. Long term, I still would like to see DGS to take this comprehensive approach now that we have the Energy Management Division inside of the Capital Projects and Energy Division. So at least we're taking the initiative of looking at each one of these areas and seeing where we can augment the design and improve either indoor air quality, energy management, renewable energy, or reduce heat island effects. So Bambi, if you would like to add anything to that, please feel free.
I will just add one comment. Well, first of all, with regard to roofs that we are currently undertaking to replace as a part of a capital project, many of the products that are used that are now spec'd the industry has recognized the effects of a white roof, for instance, and so those products are white or light gray or something along those lines. But the other thing that Councilman Conway mentioned was green roofs, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say, as far as the agency is concerned, that is probably something that gives us heart palpitations, because while it in practice sounds good, the maintenance and associated upkeep with those types of roofs typically end up being causing more problems than that type of roof itself. And if my recollection is correct, There was a green roof installed on the Fallsway homeless shelter a number of years ago, and we ended up having to take it off because it caused so many leaks, so many problems with the roof infrastructure, that at the end of the day, it was not worth, and of course there was a lot of money spent to put the green roof on, but it ultimately was a headache for the agency. So I think that's probably something that unfortunately would not be at the top of our list to consider in terms of roof replacements or, integrating into a roof replacement project.
Sure, super helpful to understand. And if you guys could confirm the white roofs piece, I feel like, and I know we're a little bit over on the hearing, but if we could confirm the white roofs piece, I think that'd just be really good to know. I do think it is probably one of the no-cost options that we can immediately implement. It would cost the city literally nothing because we're gonna have to. It has to be a color. It might as well be one that doesn't make the building hotter. Green roofs, I don't
Councilman,
know.
is that, can we get a
I'm gonna finish
clear,
up.
just a real quick, clear iteration of what the question is so that we make sure that we have that request clear?
So the iteration is whether or not we do have a policy of white roofs.
Do we have that? Okay, great. Thank you. We'll make sure that gets followed up on. Thank you.
Sure. Just to close up, I know we're a little bit over, but as far as green roofs, so on and so forth, solar panels and otherwise, really interested in understanding what opportunities we have there. One, to reduce our costs, but then also potentially turn our roofs into money makers as well. So appreciate you guys. Thank you a lot. Thanks for all the work you do. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, everybody at DGS. I didn't know I was going to get to hear the words anaerobic digestion during this hearing. I was only looking forward to hearing that in the next hearing, which will begin at 6 o'clock with DPW. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Chair, did you have any final words? All right, we are now in recess until 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.